My thought for office, going forward is I think everyone's going to want a physical presence of some sort, but when you think about a dentist or some other user that literally cannot work from home, I see very little risk there, and maybe there's mispricing on assets that maybe have those types of tenants in place. What are your thoughts on office going forward, if you have any that you can share? Do you think we're going to see tons of deals and mispricing, or are seeing tons of deals and mispricing to where people are overestimating the risk involved with office products, or just what are your general thoughts?
Yeah, so we have a handful of office buildings. So we kind of went through COVID with most of these and post-COVID and learned a lot along the way. But a lot of the office buildings we have are kind of your lofty, techie, creative type of environments that people want to be in. So you have to figure out how to differentiate yourselves and your building from everybody else because, as companies have less need for square footage. We call it a flight to quality. So people are looking for smaller spaces that are nicer, and they're willing to pay more typically per square foot for the niceness and for the level of finish. They just don't need as much square footage. So from the landlord's perspective, you're going to have more tenants in smaller spaces that are nicer. So from a tenant improvement perspective, it can be costly from the landlord unless you're able to shuffle some of that tenant improvement burden to the tenant. But we've been able to do fairly well with our office buildings. We have one where the occupancy dipped a little bit, and in trying to think outside of the box, we decided to convert about 20% of the building to a co-working space with a company that I'm sure most people have heard of, Regis. To try to drive, a little bit more traffic to the building, the right kind of traffic to the building, and really optimize the square footage of vacancy that you have.
That's a great idea, and I appreciate you sharing that because I feel like a lot of the headlines are a little removed from reality. A lot of the headlines are doom and gloom for office, but anecdotally, any conversation I have, and I'm sure that you have, the reality isn't so bad unless you're in specific submarkets where downtown, for example, that's maybe getting hit a little harder. So most of your office is suburban, correct?
Correct. Yeah, we do have we have one office building in the city on the hill. It's called the Fair Mercantile Building. But everything, is pretty suburban.
And the hill is unique for the city when it comes to office, correct? Because my understanding on that neighborhood is that it's a little more stable. There's a little bit of growth, and it doesn't feel like you're in the city when you're in the hill. Would that be accurate to say?
Yeah, you're spot on. I love the hill. So for those of you who don't know what the hill is, it's kind of the Italian neighborhood area in South St. Louis. And very unique. It's very safe. People tend to care more. And the building that we have on the hill is actually the largest office building on the hill. It's about 70,000 square feet. And it's just one of those great, safe, walkable, community-type neighborhoods.
70,000 square feet is a pretty big building. So I would be curious to hear the story on that one. We won't go into as much detail as Three Flags, but high level, was that another value add type of deal?
Yeah, it was. So that building is a story. Not as good of a story, or as long as a story, I should say, as Three Flags. But we purchased that building about 7 years ago. And there was a major tenant in the building, an anchor tenant, who had about 40% of the building. Long story short, she vacated about a year, maybe 6 months to a year after buying the building. And she vacated because she ended up committing bank fraud with a local bank and falsifying invoices and so forth. So, when we bought the building, it was humming like crazy, 100% occupied, lost a 40% tenant, and we spent the next few years climbing back out of it. And tell you real quick what we did to climb back out of it. We put in some more improvements. We marketed the building heavily, and we were willing to spend the dollars that it took to bring in the quality tenants that we wanted in that building. of which, the major tenant was not, come to find out. So we also do a lot of things like, solar panels, on our full service lease office buildings where the savings from the panels directly flow into your expenses. And, so we put a new roof on it, put 100 kWs of solar panels on it to save money, and really just tried to do the right thing and not skimp on doing it. And fast forwarding to today, it's probably one of our best performing buildings. And even though we had to invest a lot of money back into it, it's far less than what the buildings were today, and it's 100% occupied with a waiting list right now.